All right, let's begin for real. It is July 21st, 2021. So I guess we got 2121 going again. Okay, it is July 21st, 2021, and I'm going to cover a subject this morning that I have done many times before, but I want to do it a little bit differently this morning. I'm going to try to keep it under 5 minutes. In the past, I've just rambled on, and sometimes it's gone on for an hour, half an hour, 45 minutes, but today I'm going to try to stay within 5 minutes or so to tell this little story of my childhood. As I've said many times, and I shouldn't be repeating if I'm going to do all this in 5 minutes, but here we go. I was born on a farm in Arkansas. It was a farm that my parents rented. We grew cotton. We were essentially what they called at the time sharecroppers. I lived there until I was 5 years old. And I certainly cannot report that the life that I lived on the farm was without incident. Statistically, the farm is one of the most dangerous workplaces in the world. And from what my experience was during those 5 years that I lived, that's true for children who aren't workers as well. When I was 4 years old, my parents got their first modern piece of equipment. It was a washing machine, Maytag. Had a tub that held about, 4 or 5 gallons of water, which would agitate. When the wash was done, they would turn that part of the machine off, and then they would hand feed the clothing in through a wringer that would squeeze out more water than you could do by hand. It would flatten out the clothes, and it would squeeze them within an inch of their life. But the good thing is the water would be removed from the clothing. And then they would hang it up. My mother would hang the clothing on the line where it would dry from the effects of the sun and the warm air in the summertime. One day when my parents were not in the home, they had gone down to, as I've been told, because I don't remember this incident, although it had a pretty big effect on my life. They were down the road visiting with some neighbors, haggling over buying a rug from them because they were leaving the farm, which was quite common at that time, and my family would follow suit in about a year. They were haggling over the price of a rug, and I think they managed to buy the rug. But that left me and my brother Paul, who was 2 years older, so he would have been 6 or 7 years old, 6 years old probably, on to take care of ourselves. That is a dangerous proposition in any event. And while they were away, Paul and I decided, for whatever reason, again, I don't remember the incident, to really fully explore the features of the new washing machine that my mom had acquired. I don't remember if she left the machine on or if we turned it on. If we plugged it in and got the thing going while they were gone, I don't know. I mean, Paul was certainly old enough to know how to turn a couple of switches and get something working, and maybe I was too. And I think we did get water in the machine. Then I was standing on a little chair, taking the clothing from the water, feeding it into the wringer, which was a motorized electrical rollers that combined together. The clothing went through the rollers, and then the water was squeezed out, and you fed it in by hand. You just put the clothing into those wringers one garment at a time. And I do remember watching my mom do that with some fascination. I don't remember it clearly, but I do have a recollection of that. But in any event, while I was doing that, I managed to get my hand caught in the wringer. And then because of the way the wringer progresses the clothes, and whatever is entrapped is pulled right through the wringers. And my arm eventually was pulled up to my elbow, and it was stuck at the elbow. And I remained there, suspended in the air, because I had kicked over the chair, so I was hanging by my arm in the wringer as it continued to rotate, because the engine is relentless. There's no safety. The only safety was to press a button to release the wringer, which I guess my brother Paul wasn't either able to reach or to figure out that was what was needed. And for some time I was there, suspended on that machine with that wringer turning on my arm. And that turning caused friction. That friction caused a significant burn. And by the time my parents got back from their rug shopping trip, my arm was severely flattened. I think I would have gone all the way through the machine had it not been for an elbow with a bone that wasn't able to get past the wringer. But I was severely burned and in a lot of pain, I'm sure, probably in shock. They took me to the local doctor, Sawbones, a guy who had been trained as a physician. That's my phone, but I don't recognize the ring, so I'm going to ignore it. The doctor, well, when they took me to the doctor examined the damage and said that's a severe burn. His immediate recommendation was to let him use his saw to cut the arm off at the elbow, and that would be a nice, clean break, loss of a limb, and that it would heal pretty quickly without much problem, and I could learn to have a very full life with just a left arm to work with. I don't know who objected to that. My mom and dad were pretty pliable when it came to solutions for the kids, as far as I know. But the doctor did say there is one other thing we could try. Fortunately, although he had been trained at the turn of the century, he had served in battle in World War II as a field doctor. And there they had developed some experimental procedures to use on the soldiers who had been burned in battle. And that was called skin grafting. And that's where they take one area of the body that's healthy and has skin and harvest skin from there, and then put that skin, apply it to the burned area, and then through that method would end up with a scar, but a healthy limb. So if that worked, I would not lose my arm. His concern was that we lived on the farm, we were ignorant, and we were dirty, and I was going to get infected, and something much worse than losing my arm would come from this injury. I would probably end up with gangrene and die. So his was preventative medicine. He was trying to save my life. But they after talking about it, they said, well, we'll do that experimental surgery. We'll try to save Barry's arm. They sent me to Little Rock, Arkansas, where I spent a month in the hospital being treated for this burn. And they removed large patches of flesh from my upper leg, from my thigh, and they put that on my arm. And then I don't know if it was a necessary part of the procedure, normal. I have been told that the first effort wasn't entirely successful, so they had to go back and harvest some more skin from the other thigh. And eventually it did take. And I went home after a month or so, and I was left to heal on my own on the farm. Now the result of that was, let's see if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. This scar on my arm. Now scars don't grow, I've learned. So that scar on a child probably was the entire arm. So this whole arm was probably under, scarring. But if you look there, you can see the scar. That's it right there. Massive scar. I have similar scars on my leg. Now they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I hate those old sayings that seem to contain truth but are just bullshit. Truisms that seldom contain much in the way of truth, and wisdom that certainly doesn't offer wisdom. What doesn't kill you probably isn't going to make you stronger. It's probably going to make you worse. They say that they're old wives' tales, but I don't think old wives would have come up with ideas as dumb as that. And if they did, they certainly would have known better than to repeat them. But what I did learn from this in the long run is that the outcome on these things are sometimes quite different than what you might expect when you're in the heat of it happening, in the heat of battle. So we moved from, shortly after I was injured, we moved to Chicago. And when I moved to Chicago, I still had basically an open sore on my arm that was healing. But I made no follow-up visits to the doctors. I was just left to the, whatever my mom and dad could do to keep that from getting infected and healing. And I was just a kid, so I was 4 years old. Now, flash forward, so I was about 10 years, not quite 10 years. I'm 13 years old, maybe 14. No, I was 13 because I was going into eighth grade, summer. It was actually the summer break, at the very beginning of summer, just out of school, playing around in the big building. And I loved the big building because it had so many kids in it. You could offend 10 kids in the morning and have them not talking to you and still have 10 kids to play with in the afternoon who were your BFFs. Next day you could reset, start with a different set of 10, and just always had plenty of kids to play games and stuff. So you were hardly ever alone when you were in the big building. One beautiful, sunny summer morning, I decided, I took it upon myself to impress this young girl, Janie, who lived in the building. She was in my class, so she was my age. And she was a dark-haired Mexican beauty that I had such a crush on. I didn't even know what a crush was, but I certainly was crushing on Janie. And I met her in the hallway on the second floor with her. She was with her little siblings. And to impress her, now remember, this is a 13-year-old boy trying to impress a 13-year-old girl. Okay, that's what I was trying to do, as far as I remember. And to impress her, I decided a good way to do that would be jump up onto the windowsill of a window that was the open part of that window was as big as I was. So it was a huge window. It opened like a window opens up. And I jumped up on that ledge, and I was going to, make some pithy, very profound statement to her that would, at that point, she would vow her undying love to me, and we would be BFFs forever. It didn't quite work out that way, because when I jumped up on the ledge, I misjudged a lot of things at that moment. I misjudged how far I could jump. I misjudged how wide that ledge was, and I completely misjudged of my ability to land on that ledge after on jumping. So there have been discussions in my family, and I've heard them, and I haven't usually participated in them. Did Barry jump out that window? Was he trying to be Superman? Or did he fall? It's hard to make a case that I fell from a window that's just a window in a hallway that you don't have, unless you are messing around with the window, it's going to be no risk to you. So, yes, I jumped. There is no doubt I jumped. And I did that of my own free will. I took that leap of non-faith or whatever it was. But I didn't land on the ledge. And this instant that I was in the air jumping on the ledge, I realized I had gone a ledge too far. I was out in air. And unlike cartoons where you can recover from that by simply making some sort of scooting sound and work your legs and you would get back on the ledge, that's not the way reality works. I was on, by the time I realized I had missed the ledge, I was on the way down, and I was going down quickly, and I was increasingly going down faster according to the laws of Newtonian physics. And I did fall. So, was it an accident? No. An accident would be I would be walking down the stairs and tripped and fell out of that window. I do not claim that what happened to me was an accident. It was my own doing. I jumped. I didn't mean to jump out of the window. I didn't mean to jump from the second floor onto a concrete sidewalk below with no shoes on. That wasn't my intent. But it wasn't an accident. It wasn't something that happened out of the norm, that just through happenstance, by chance. I caused it to happen. The result was I landed on my right foot, and I crushed it beyond what would be usable. Now, if that accident would have happened on the farm, I have a feeling I would not have a right foot today. But fortunately, it happened in the city of Chicago. I guess if there's good news, if there is good news from a tragedy like that, yeah, good news. It happened in Chicago. So I was taken to a children's hospital. It was a charitable hospital run by the Masons called the Masonic Hospital, the Illinois Masonic Hospital. And it had a big children's ward. Now, I was 14 years old. I keep saying 14. I was 13 years old, and they put me in the children's ward because I wasn't quite old. They argued about it after the procedure was done. But in the end, they decided even though I was a giant compared to the other kids in that ward, that would be the best place for me to be in the hospital, not up with adults, because I really wasn't an adult. So the result of that was I crushed my foot, and they had a doctor there, Dr. Schaefer, a Jewish guy, who I think he was also trained in, or at least had some of his service some of his time as a doctor was spent in the military. But I don't know that that's true. That's just a recollection. And he spent hours in surgery, patiently piecing my foot back together like a jigsaw puzzle, trying to, with whatever tools he had available. And when this procedure was done, he told my parents, because he didn't tell, I don't think Dr. Schaefer ever talked to me. And all the times, and we had several visits after the event, but I think all the conversations were with my parents. And they told my parents that the best that we could hope for in my recovery was that those bones would knit, that they would heal. But I had done such massive damage, he could not really restore the ankle. He couldn't make it like he couldn't make it so that it would move around. But it had some limited movement, quite limited. But it was going to be like now it was just going to be a hinge, up and down. Which meant if we were lucky, if I was lucky, I would be able to walk, but probably with some effort and most likely with a pronounced limp. But never run and never be able to do the things that a normal ankle would do. And I was going to live with that. And he also talked about what would happen when I got to the point of my life today. This part of being limited by the. He said that there would be considerable arthritis in the foot, and that at some point it would probably lose all of its movement, all of its motion. But hopefully that would come in the future, and that I would have some good years out of the foot, relatively good years of using the foot. So, again, I could have died from that fall in the window. Had I not been able to land with my feet down and landed, say, on my back or on my head, that could have been a life ending. But I will not say that what didn't kill me made me stronger. To me, I would argue, and I would argue to this day, that it made me weaker because the doctor was right. I never regained movement in my foot. There's a remarkable difference between my right foot and my left foot. My right foot, it is a hinge. And if I try to make it do anything other than up and down, it is a painful experience. And speaking of pain, it always hurts. Every day I have a painful experience if I think about my foot. Now, it's a kind of pain that I think your brain eventually shuts it off and stops listening to it. But if I think about it, like I am right now, I recognize that there is considerable discomfort in my right foot. But it didn't kill me. But I am not going to argue that it made me stronger. Now, maybe if someone were giving a talk or, some essay about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, maybe they would take more of a metaphorical interpretation of that idea, that if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. It makes you stronger in some spiritual way. I'm not going to argue against that. I just don't believe it, but I'm not going to argue against it. But I'll tell you, the outcome of those things can have profound effects on your life in ways that you don't expect. For instance, while I was in the hospital in Little Rock and they were working on my arm with the skin grafting, they had to do blood work and whatever they could do at the time to figure out other things that were going on. And they discovered that I had a parasite in my liver, worms. And they said, the doctor said that if they hadn't found that would have proven lethal to me. And that was, I guess it was a common, not an uncommon thing on the farm to pick up that sort of parasite. But that if they hadn't found that as a direct result of me going to the hospital, because I never went to the doctor as a child unless there was something drastically wrong. You just didn't do that. You treated yourself at home because there was no health care and there was no clear path to a doctor if you didn't have some money to give to the doctor or something to pay him in kind crops or animals or something. So there's no way until I got quite sick that I would have gone to the doctor, and maybe it would have been too late. So in that case, quite literally, what did not kill me may have saved my life. Now, did that make me stronger? Well, it kept me alive, maybe. And my foot. It did prove to be quite a limitation throughout my life, all the way till now, still is. The reason that on many days I have to walk with a cane at age 73 is because of my foot and how it's affected not only my ankle, but my knees and my hips. And that arthritis that the doctor promised or threatened that would come when I got older, well, guess what? I have the arthritis. But there was one direct outcome of injuring my foot that was completely unexpected. And I can argue that it did, in fact, probably save my life. When I got to be 17 years old, I had to present myself for the selective service, the draft, and there was a war going on at the time, Vietnam, and it was a very hot war. Near 100,000 Americans were killed in that conflict, and probably an equal number disabled for their lives from their experience there. And I, at 17, like all other kids of that age, went down and got a physical to see if how we were going to be drafted, which service we would end up in. It was just a lottery. You would end up in the Army or the whatever service, whatever branch of the service needed me would have taken me. I certainly didn't want to go I didn't want to go and serve in the military. I did not want to go to war. I had no interest in Vietnam. I would say that I was morally opposed to it. If cowardice is moral, then I was totally morally opposed to the war. But so they gave me a physical, and they checked out all the functioning parts of my body, and they discovered on their own. I didn't even tell them, of course. I didn't even think about my foot. But the doctors, it was obvious that that I had that foot, and as a result, I failed the physical. The doctor told the sergeant at the end of the procedure, which took most of a day, said that, "Son, you will never serve in this man's army." That was his phrase to me. I don't think he expected my reaction. He thought I was going to, I guess, be sad that I was being rejected by the Army. But I, as I recall, I put my arms around the guy and gave him a kiss. But in truth, that which did not kill me, which was falling from that window, probably saved my life. Did that make me stronger? I don't know. But it may have preserved my life until I'm sitting here today. My best friend at the time, Kenny Green, in order to avoid the draft, he volunteered for the Marines. You just have to go and find out what that means. But he didn't avoid anything by joining the Marines. He chose, instead of the frying pan, he chose the fire. And within months of the time that he enlisted, he was dead in Vietnam. I don't know that would have been my fate, but my best friend, it was his fate. And I was only spared that particular fate because of what I did when I was 13 years old, which I thought was a devastating injury, and it was. So how do you make, you want to make something of those two stories I just told? Do you want to say that, what doesn't kill you saves your life? Okay, well, I guess you could say what doesn't kill you spares your life. You have an opportunity to live another day. And in those opportunities, you may discover that what didn't kill you might extend your life. But I would caution you not to accept that idea as something you can rely on.